about HM Pharma Consultancy, my company and myself. I'm a biochemist and molecular biologist by training. As you can imagine, this is some 40 years ago. I've been working in sequencing technology when it was very young. I've been working in immunology at Sandoz at the time when it was an independent company. We worked on natural killer cells. And then I switched over to a smaller pharmaceutical company and was working on HIV diagnostics, and later on, and this set me on the way of founding HM Pharma Consultancy on repurposing galantamine for Alzheimer's disease. Yeah, I was part of the team that did that, and it was a really interesting experience. So for the past 21 years, I've been running HM Pharma Consultancy. We are scientists primarily. We still try to push out a few papers per year, and mostly we succeed. But our work, our bread and butter work, is on the interface between science, cutting-edge science in pharmacology, law, and regulatory affairs and patents. So if you wish, we are trying to get the ideas for drug repurposing into clinical trials and beyond. We are doing drug repurposing translational development. And you might think at first sight that this is a bureaucratic and law affair and really very, very dumb and requires only paperwork. But hey, yeah, you want to develop something, you want to bring something towards approval. So you need this translational research, and for this you need the authorities, and you need to know how they tick, you need to know how to work with them, and this is what we do. Same thing with patent attorneys and so on. So we specialized on drug repurposing very soon, and here I need to dispel a few myths. You can see, and have been seeing for many years, publications claiming that drug repurposing is throughout the garden. Very quick, very cheap, very easy. You don't need a phase 1. You go to phase 2 more or less immediately. And since you already know which doses to apply in most cases, and you know about the metabolism and everything, you have a much better targeted phase 2 and 3. So you cut down on your development time and cost severely. Well, this is true in some cases, but it really depends on the individual case. You cannot make a global statement on this. It's relatively easy if you have a relatively newly approved drug which you want to repurpose, a drug which has been developed and approved according to current ICH compliant criteria. And very important, of course, you can get your hands on the data, yeah, for which you normally either need the original developer, or you must do what in the United States would be a 505(b)(2) application, meaning that the agency would address the data and pull out the data which they have on the drug, and they tell you what they still need from you. Yeah? A similar thing, the hybrid application exists in Europe. So that's the relatively easy case, but even then, you will, in most cases, need to reformulate the drug because nobody would like an existing drug to be sold by another company in the same formulation. In many cases, it would not be appropriate to use the same dosing or the same route of administration, really. So you do need a new phase 1, of course, because what has been an injectable product is now an oral drug, yeah, and so on and so forth. But now imagine you're going to repurpose a generic drug, maybe a drug which has been on the global market or on many markets for 4 or 5 decades, old drug. Yeah. Worse even, try to imagine you want to repurpose a nutritional supplement or something like this. Yeah. So now I can give you 2 examples. The first example is an extreme one, of course, but we are really facing these problems now with one of our European Union H2020 projects. Assume that you find out that a combination of, let's say, chocolate powder and an amino acid, let's say arginine, works against COVID-19 in some way. No? Antiviral or anti-inflammatory or curbing cytokine storms, whatever, no matter. So you would imagine that this should not be a problem because everybody eats chocolate. No? And if you drink a cup of chicken soup, you get all the amino acids, including arginine. Yeah? So where could there be a problem? Well, for the scientist, there is no problem. For the regulator, the problem is enormous because neither chocolate nor arginine are approved drugs. And the iron rule is the moment you want to do a clinical trial, you need to do it with drugs, meaning that you need production according to good manufacturing practices, meaning that the raw material must be compliant with GMP. The facility needs to be compliant with these rules, and you must have all the analytics. And then you do the combination. And it's quite possible, really almost to be expected, that the regulators would now say, yeah, but hey, nobody has ever tried this in COVID-19 patients. Yeah? So what would happen if you give these 2 things together to COVID-19 patients? There's no toxicology. There's no drug interaction which anybody has studied. Yeah? So whatever you are using in a full-scale regulatory compliant clinical trial is a drug. And this is a bureaucratic position which you can think about whatever you like, but in any case, it's a fact. As I'm telling you, we are facing such a problem right now. And something has to be done about this because it really impedes development. Nobody is going to produce GMP compliant cocoa powder or GMP compliant arginine. Yeah? There should be clinical trials that do not impose such meaningless things on stuff that you have been ingesting for decades or maybe almost as long as civilization has existed. Okay, this is an extreme example, but it illustrates, I think, how the regulators think. They have a book and they are going by the book. So there are no exceptions. Yeah? We have tried, but whatever you do in a clinical trial has to be done with a GMP compliant material. So next thing, not so extreme. A few days ago, we had a press release from Montreal. They completed the large trial with colchicine, the Corona trial. And the results are really fascinating. We had, let me see, 2 days ago, we had the preprint on MedRxiv, so you can look this up there. The gist of it, they had 4,500 patients, and those were unhospitalized patients at home. Majority of them was confirmed by PCR to have COVID-19, and hospitalization was reduced by 50%. Mechanical ventilation was reduced by 50%, deaths by 44%. Yeah? So amazing, absolutely amazing. This is going to be published, of course. It's a huge clinical trial, a controlled trial, a double-blind trial, a placebo-controlled trial. The colchicine preparation and the placebo were managed by Pharmascience, which is a large Canadian CRO. So this was all GMP. So what will happen now? Yeah, we have a beautiful clinical study result. I think it would be difficult to oppose the results of cold corona because the dose was low, 0.5 milligram twice a day for 3 days, and 0.5 milligram per day for as long as 30 days. And colchicine is a very old drug. It has been used to treat gout for don't know how many decades. It's approved, it's on the market in the United States and Canada and in most European countries. It's manufactured according to GMP. So why won't a pharma company not pick this up and apply for a license extension or a new license to treat COVID-19? Because there's also a very good pharmacological rationale for it. You're inhibiting the NLRP3 inflammasome. This has been shown in gout. This has been shown for other things where colchicine is licensed: pericarditis, familial Mediterranean fever, Behçet's disease, which is a periodical, highly inflammatory condition, and so on. But, okay, now we are coming to the buts, and this is why colchicine is not going to be approved for COVID-19 anytime soon. Colchicine is a very narrow therapeutic window. Yeah? There are several deaths from colchicine overdoses each year, and you can be almost sure to get diarrhea if you take it. You have myotonia, muscle weakness, not only at higher doses, also at 0.5 milligram per day, and so on and so forth. So I'm really interested in what the detailed side effect data will tell us. Right now, we have only the percentages, and this shows that it seems to be very good. But then on the other side, and this is something where the regulators will pick up on immediately, the toxicology and the side effect profile of colchicine has never been studied in a rigidly conducted clinical trial according to current criteria. And only a year ago in BMC, we had the first PRISM compliant study of side effects in terms of meta-analysis, which shows that colchicine is not at all harmless. How should it be? It's an alkaloid. Yeah? So there are many questions still open here, and if you only want to think about filing colchicine for COVID-19, you have to address all these things. So it's not easy. You need to know how these things work. It's a bad idea to try doing this without experts, and these experts must know and understand the science, and they must know how to work with regulators, because this is an entirely different world. Those people are scientists, basically, or used to be scientists, and now they have a book and have to go after this book. Yes, finally, before I conclude, could you repurpose a vaccine? No, strange idea. Yeah. But in fact, we had such a case where a large vaccine developer called us in and asked us, could you repurpose our major product for a different indication? That's a difficult thing, of course, but I believe it could be done in certain cases. Vaccines are supposed to be specific, but in many cases they have effects that you didn't consider during the clinical trials. So there is a chance, theoretically at least, that you could also repurpose vaccines. It won't help you against COVID-19, of course, and we have to be very grateful for what has happened during the past year. Because if I imagine how long it would have taken without COVID-19 to get an mRNA vaccine into a field trial, which is what we are currently doing. We are vaccinating millions and millions of people with 2 doses each of an mRNA vaccine, which is a strategy which has been tried only once, small scale, for Ebola. Yeah, and this vaccine has never been broadly marketed. And now when this year, 2021, is over, we will have a huge, absolutely huge amount of reference data for the first human mRNA vaccines, which we would never have gotten during this decade. This is something I'm certain of. Okay, that's what I wanted to tell you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hermann. Now, because you are the new host, will you please unmute Pierre and Professor Arkin, so if they want to ask a question or if they want to say something, they can say, but it's up to you to unmute them. I cannot unmute them, I think. That's the question. I personally, I have, because, you know, the